Hello all, welcome to Clear Technologies and welcome to Agile Scrum course. So I hope you have saw all our previous videos in this series, and this is our next video, and in this video we will be discussing in detail or in depth about what is user story and how to estimate the user stories and how to do the capacity planning and everything in detail with one example, right? So yeah, let's get started. But before that, if you are visiting our channel for the first time, please to subscribe our channel and share this video to others, and please like. If you have any doubts, please comment out below in the comment section. All right. So let us see what is the user stories. So as of till now, we have discussed about what is agile and what is agile manifesto, values, and everything. Right. So to start any project or to start any software to develop, right, we need to gather the requirements. That is our first phase. Even in waterfall model or even in agile, in sprint by sprint also, we need to gather the requirement. That is our first step, right? So once we gather the requirement, we will be storing, or we will do some kind of repository. We will store all these requirements in the format of user story, right? In agile terminology it is called user story. It is nothing but the requirement of the all features which we are going to implement. And we will be having product backlog and sprint backlog. Different backlogs are there that we will be discuss in detail whenever we come to this artifact section, right? So once we yeah, here I have shown you these are all the roles, events, and artifacts, right? We will be discussing in detail. But before we discuss that, you need to understand what is the user story and how the user story looks like and everything, right? So in agile terminology, all the requirements, if we gather in it in a specific format, then it is called user story. It's the requirement of all the product to be implemented or project. So to capture this user story details, we need to follow a structure. This is kind of structure you need to follow. And it's like as a dash, I want, so that these details you need to fill in order to fill this user stories. What is this dashes? So we are actually going to write these user stories in terms of in the end user point of view or in the customer point of view. See, for example, if you are a WhatsApp user, we are all WhatsApp users, right? So as a WhatsApp user, I want to send audio messages. That is my requirement. Here the project requirement is to add an additional feature to the existing WhatsApp application. That additional feature is like to that feature should allow to send the audio messages in the WhatsApp. That feature is already there. I'm just taking that as an example. So we are sending audio messages also in WhatsApp, right? So if that is not implemented, let's assume that that is our requirement to be implemented. Then that requirement we need to capture in the form of user story is like this. So as a WhatsApp user, this is the end user or customer. This is the first line, and then what is your requirement? What you want to do? That you need to mention here. I want to send audio messages. That is your second step. Third step, once you implement this feature, what is the result you will get? That result you need to mention here, or what is the benefit you will get once you implement this feature. Like that. So I want this, so that I can do this. So as a member of this or as a user of this, I want this feature so that I can use that feature in this way. Something like that. So I want to send audio messages so that I can convey my message effectively for those unable to read messages. So that is the purpose of this feature. That is the end result of this feature once it is implemented. So like this, you need to mention a user story or a requirement. In agile terminology, it is called a user story. We need to capture all the requirements, and each user story should implement each feature. It is independent from one another. Right. So in user stories, basically you have a three sections. One is title, description, and acceptance criteria. So title is same, which we have discussed right now. Description means we need to mention some elaborated details about this particular requirement. Then acceptance criteria, that is the main thing. So acceptance criteria, in this acceptance criteria section, you are going to mention what are the different functionalities you are going to achieve in this user story. Alright, so like for example, you need to add this audio message. That audio message length should be 30 seconds or 1 minute, and it should accept all the different messages. And once you hold that audio button, it should record that audio, and once you release that audio button, it should end the audio. It will send automatically in the WhatsApp chat window, something like that. All the requirements, step by step, you will mention in the acceptance criteria section. Along with this functional requirements, we will be having non-functional requirements also, like performance or availability or some other thing, some other non-functional requirements also there. If that is also related to this functionality, I mean, if this feature requires such kind of non-functional requirements, you need to mention that non-functional requirements also in this acceptance criteria section. Right? Instead of showing this slide, I can walk you through how to create these user stories in Azure DevOps. So Azure DevOps is also a tool, right? This Azure DevOps is a tool which is used for it's kind of coding repository, as well as to manage this. Uh, I mean, agile cycles, Scrum cycles, and all this. We can use Azure DevOps for this purpose as well. So here, if you can see, this is the boards, Azure board. So here you can manage, I mean, by using this feature, you can manage this sprints and agile functionality, Scrum framework or agile methodology. You can use by using this boards option, which is available in Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is the one of the tool which will be allowing us to do this agile methodology practices and all. And we have many tools also available in the market. I am familiar with this tool, and most of the projects now using this Azure DevOps. So that's I will show this as an example. But we have Jira tool and some other tools also there in the market. Based on your organization, based on your customer requirement, you will choose this tool. I mean, your organization will choose this tool, but the process is almost everything same. Only the tool utilization UI will differ, right? So here in the boards, if you can see the backlogs, actually we have two different backlogs. I will explain that later. Then maybe you can just go to this board. So here, this is the user story which I am talking about. So here, new item, and here are the different things, epics, features, and stories, different functionalities also available here. I mean, different categories available here. This we will discuss it in detail in our backlog refinement section. As of now, remember, this is the user story where you will capture all the requirements, functional requirements, as well as the non-functional requirements of a particular feature which are going to be implemented. So by clicking on this new item, you will write the title. So I have already written this for our Telugu version video. I'll just do it again. Okay. So as a WhatsApp user, I want to send audio messages so that I can convey my message effectively, something like that we can. Will it be? Let's click on enter. It will create one user story. This is the title, and this number you can ignore for now, because for my practice purpose I have created multiple user stories. But this user story number is also matter once you are working in the real-time project. You can just remember this by using this number, user story number. Alright, so this is the title. The second one is description, which we have seen in our slide. So here you will mention little elaborated details. We need to implement this feature, so and so, something like that. So this is the main acceptance criteria. So here below, functionalities need to be implemented. So now here you can mention one by one, step by step, what are the functional requirements, what are the non-functional requirements, and if there is any dependencies, everything about this user story you need to write here. So once we have this acceptance criteria in detail, and once all developers are agreed with this acceptance criteria, then only this user story will take into account to complete in particular sprint. If acceptance criteria is not there, as a developer we will be not will be not knowing any details about this user story, what to be implemented. So by seeing this title, that is fine, we can understand this is the feature we need to implement. But what are the things not to do? It acceptance criteria will not tell you how to do the things, but it will tell you what to do the things. What requirements it is expecting. Once by end of this sprint, or once you complete this user story requirement, it should definitely meet with all these requirements. Right, so like that you can mention all the acceptance criteria, all the requirements in this acceptance criteria section, and we will be estimating it with these story points that we will be discussing little bit later, okay, in detail. So as of now I'm just closing this. So, and this is your board, this is your sprint board. Here you will see couple of columns. Even for sprint to sprint, or maybe sorry, even for each and every project, they can customize this column names. As of now, I have used this in new, in progress, resolved, and closed. So once you have all the user stories before you start the sprint, what you will do in real time as a developer, right? So you, let's say for example, we have this 10 user stories. For example, we have 5 members of developers. So once you start the sprint from this week to two, and usually sprint will be 2 weeks. I will tell you that in detail. Usually, I mean in general, a sprint will be 2 weeks sprint. So 10 working days will be there. So once you start the sprint, let's say you are one of the developer, you can assign this user story to you. We can assign it by ourselves. Right here, yeah, here unassigned, you can just select your name. This is by email, but usually it will show you your email. Okay, so you can assign it to you as a developer, because in Scrum or in Agile team there is no other hierarchy like team leader or manager who will assign tasks to you. That is not the case in Agile. In Agile, development team is self-organized team. Okay, this is one of the activity that will tell the team is self-organized. So once you start the sprint, you can select the user story, whichever you want, and you can assign it to you. And you can, once you start working on this user story, you can drag and drop this to in progress column. The user story is available in this new column means this user story is yet to be started. Not development is not yet started, but we need to complete these user stories in this sprint. So we can take one by one user story. So first this user story I have assigned it to me, and I can just drag and drop into the in progress column. So now I will be working on this user story. I will do the development and all. Once I am done with the development, once I am done the unit testing, then I will move this user story to resolved. Why, how this is resolved? You can just check it again as to the acceptance criteria. The points mentioned in the acceptance criteria, if you met those points, you can make it as resolved, not the done. There is a lot of difference between definition of done and its acceptance criteria. That is also we will be covering later. So as of now, once you are done with the development specific to this user story, so development is done now, we can move it to resolved. And we cannot close it right away. To close this, and to some organizations will have done here in the column name. So if you want to move your user story to done column, you need to check lot many things apart from this actual requirement of this user story, that we will see later. So once you are done with this development, you can just move it to resolved. Then you can assign another user story to you, and you can just send this to in progress. You can start working on it. Once you are done with the development and once you are done with the testing, then you can move it to the result. Here the statuses are automatically updated. Active, resolved. Here it is closed. Here it is new, like that. Right, so this is your day-to-day activity as a developer once you start any project, once you are working any project in Agile methodology. Okay, let's move on. I hope you understand how to create the user story and all. So let's move on. So this is how you can give title, description, and acceptance criteria. Then, before you do the user story estimation, then see, our next task would be, once you are done with this user stories, we can pull the user stories from the backlog and we can have these user stories. But you need to estimate this user story, means how many story points we need to be allocated here, how complex this user story is. That activity also we need to do in the event of sprint planning. We have a couple of sprint events. We have already seen in that diagram 5 events are there, but we'll be discussing it one by one, right? So here all the names highlighted in green: daily scrum, sprint, sprint planning, sprint review, retrospective, all these are the sprint events or scrum events, you can say. So the first event would be always sprint planning. Before you start the sprint, you will be having this sprint planning meeting. In this sprint planning meeting, all the team, scrum team will be there as a participants, like product owner, development team, scrum master, everyone will be there. Everyone in this team will be discussing about each and every user story one by one, all the 10 user stories if you select all the 10. So all the user stories you will discuss one by one and you will do the estimation, means how complex is the user story, how much time it will take to complete it. Then only we can have proper proper time estimation or proper story point estimation, like how many user stories we can complete by end of the sprint, something like that. Okay, so to provide that estimation, before that you need to do one activity. Actually scrum master will do this, but you need to know as a developer. So before you start that estimation, you need to do this capacity planning. This scrum master will do usually. So let's say, for example, we have 5 members in our team as a development team. Forget about scrum master and forget about product owner. We have 5 members, 5 developers are there, and we have 2 weeks sprint. And for each day, we will be calculating it as a 6 hours per day. Usually, we will be working as 8 hours or 9 hours per day. But we will consider only 6 hours per day for this development, because we have daily scrum and we have some other meetings and we have some other breaks and all everything, right? We cannot calculate 8 hours per day. We can take average 6 hours per day in general. So it means 2 weeks means 10 working days, 5 members, 6 hours per day. So 5 into 10 into 6, 300 hours we can work in this sprint as a 5 members team for 2 weeks sprint, right? So 300 hours we can contribute in this sprint. Even in that, we may have some vacations or we may have some holidays, and any one of the developer is having some planned leave, right? So we need to calculate that as well. We need to we need to deduct that hours also in this total hours. So for example, all the holidays or vacations of all the 5 members is 40 hours. We need to deduct this 40 from the total hours which we have for the sprint. So 300 minus 42, so 260 hours. So we have 260 hours we can contribute to this sprint to complete the work, right? And this point I just added, but in some, we need to first understand hours is different, story points is different. Story point means that doesn't mean that one story point is 1 hour, two story point is 2 hours, something like that. That is not the true. Story point is different with the hours. In general, we are not going to estimate like hours in Agile. We will be estimated any users, all the user stories in terms of story points, like how complex it is. So usually one story point is in the background. Some organizations consider it as a 4 hours. Some organizations it will consider as a 8 hours. That just keep in mind. But we are not going to estimate in hours. We will be estimating in story point. Okay. So we have 260 hours. And for example, one story point we can make it as a 4 hours. 260 by 4, 65. So overall 65 story points we can deliver in this sprint. In this 10 days of 2 weeks sprint, we can deliver 65 story points in this sprint. Like this, we will do the capacity planning. As I said, like a Scrum Master will do this. Once we have this capacity planning, then we have some idea like, okay, how many story points we can deliver in this sprint. So 65 story points in our example. Now we will do the actual estimation. Actual estimation for all the user stories. Let's see how we can do this. So officially we will be having a event or sprint meeting called sprint planning event. We'll be discussing more about different kind of events in next videos, but remember this user stories estimation is going to be done in sprint planning meeting. So before starting off every sprint and by end of the previous sprint, we will be having a meeting, sprint planning event. In this event, all the Scrum team like Scrum Master, Product Owner, and development team, everyone will participate in this sprint event, sprint planning event. Then they will be discuss about the user stories, and they will do the estimation for each and every user story. Right? So I'll explain how we are going to do in our sprint planning event. So product owner is there na, he will explain the user stories. I mean, he will walk you through the user stories, like what is the need of that user story and what is the goal of that user story, how important that is, and how we need to not like how to implement, but what we need to achieve by implementing that user story. Like that he will explain that to the all the development team. And then Scrum Master will help us to estimate the user stories. There will be a tool called planning poker. Usually we will use this, but few members, like few teams, will use maybe other tools, but usually we will go with this planning poker tool, which is there in even Azure DevOps also. It will be there. By using this planning poker, we are actually having two different methods to estimate the user stories. This is not the actual hours. This is just a relative kind of estimation. It is not the absolute hours. It is a kind of relative estimation. Just you need to remember that point. Why? Because we are not going to estimate each and every user story. User story means a requirement in general. So we are not going to estimate the requirement in hours, like to complete this it will take 10 hours, 15 hours, or maybe 20 hours, something like that. We cannot do that, because sometimes what will happen now, we may remove the user stories, and in the same sprint we will replace that user story with another user story based on the priority or based on the customer feedback, like that. That will happen sometimes. So in that case, if we estimate all the user stories like absolute hours, it is waste of time. Again, we need to swap the user stories sometimes, na. So that is why we will be estimating user stories relative uh, things, and these points are known as story points. These points are called as story points. We are going to estimate our user stories in two different methods. Few organizations will follow t-shirt sizing, and few organizations will follow Fibonacci series. It depends on organization, or it depends on the client. So Fibonacci series means we will be giving story points. In the t-shirt sizing method, we are going to give the sizing of like small, medium, large, XL kind of sizes we will give for the user stories. I will explain t-shirt sizing first, then we will come to Fibonacci series, because we are going to discuss more about Fibonacci series. The t-shirt sizing method, what will happen now? They will take one user story. I mean, product owner will take one user story. He will explain what are the things need to be done. He will not explain how we are going to do, but he will just say that what are the requirements and what are the things we need to achieve for that user story. So based on that discussion, Scrum Master, he will ask each and every developer to provide their estimation. Say for example, user story means, for example, to build a website, we will be having a menu bar, right? Let's take that example. So we are going to add one menu button. That's it. That is a very simple user story, right? Just we need to add a button. We need to give the label to that button. So it is a based on the complexity, we will give the sizing. So to do this button, to add one button and to give that label, how much time it will take? Is it small or medium kind of complexity, or large complexity, or very complexity? It is a small one, right? So it is a very less complexity user story. Then we will be giving small as the estimation. Each and every developer have different views of different user stories. Let's say for example we have 4 developers in our team. I will give a small in my point of view, it is very little work. In maybe some other developer point of view, it is little complex work. They will give medium, and who will give which sizing, it will not be visible to the all the developers initially. Initially what Scrum Master will do, he will give access to this tool for all of us. We will select our sizes and it will be hidden for one another. Then once we, if we say like everyone provide their own estimates, then Scrum Master will release these cards. It's kind of cards. Then if all are same, then we will fix that, like are the four developers give the size as yes, we will fix that user story is a small. If some developer give medium and some developer give large, then we will discuss with all the development team and all the product owner. Scrum Master will discuss why you give, why you have given medium and why you have given large, something like that. Because to understand the complexity, it is not like pointing out some developer why you have given medium, it is a very small user story, now you have to complete it a little bit time, like that. It is not that kind of discussion. The discussion will be there why you have thought it is a medium user story. Do you have any other thoughts in your mind? Do you feel any dependencies are missing, or do you feel any other code dependency is there, something like that. We will have some positive kind of discussion in the sprint planning meeting. If everyone agrees to one sizing, then we will finalize that size and we will assign that size to the user story. That is happening in t-shirt sizing, and the same process will be happening in Fibonacci series. I will explain little more about it. So coming to Fibonacci series, maybe if you are from IT background, you will be having little idea. It is like this is not the continuous numbers, but it is having a formula like 1, 2. These two numbers will be common. Then first two numbers, if you have add, it will come another number like 2 plus 1, 3, 3 plus 2, 5, 5 plus 3, 8, 8 plus 5, 13, like that. So we will be having maximum 1 to 13 story points. We will be going to assign to this any of the user story, because we are not going to assign 21 user story points to any user story, like 13 plus 8 21 na? We will not going to assign 21 story points to any user story in general, because a sprint is a 2 weeks timeline, right? So if you have given 21, it means it is a very complex user story. You may or may not complete that user story even within the 2 weeks sprint, due to a lot of dependencies or due to complexity of the logic or whatever it would be the reason. So if the maximum number is 13, at least we can have one user story with 13. Even if we have, for example, we can able to complete this complex user story even in the single sprint, 2 weeks of sprint, which means 10 working days. So that is why we'll be in general having the numbers story points from 1 to 13, that too in Fibonacci series. So if any user story, if any developer feel if it is more complex, then the maximum number we can give as 13 story points. So likewise, in the same way which I have explained in t-shirt sizing also, here also for each and every user story, if we have 5 developers, Scrum Master will give access to all these cards to all the developers. 5 developers will select the story points based on their understanding of that user story. If most majority of the development team select one story point, they will discuss and they will finalize that. If we have different opinions in the story points, like one developer feel if it is very complex, they have given 5 points, and one developer felt like it is somewhat little better, so they have given maybe that person have given 3 story points. Then there will be a positive discussion in the related to that particular user story. Product owner will explain everything, development team will discuss everything with Scrum Master and product owner. If all are agreed to one story point, then that will be finalized and that will be assigned to a user story. Right, so once we finalize this user story, here we have created a couple of user stories, right, in this board. Then in each and every for each and every user story in that sprint planning event, we will be adding the story points here. Let's say for example, for this user story, everyone is agreed to complete this in 5 story points, because it is a little large user story to complete, to add audio message or to send it, to have some validations, to have some non-functional requirements and all. They feel like we need 5 story points, then okay, we will apply these 5 user story points, we'll edit here and we will save that. Then it will be visible here as a story points. So likewise, if we have 10 user stories or 15 user stories or 5 user stories, We will be discussing all the user stories one by one in that particular sprint, in the sprint planning event. Then we will be having the estimation. I hope you got this point, right? Then for each and every user story, there will be a acceptance criteria, and for all of the user stories, we will be having definition of done. These two are not same. I will be explaining in detail of this definition of done in later sessions. But what is the acceptance criteria? Let's focus on acceptance criteria for now. See, acceptance criteria are defined as the conditions that must be satisfied for a product, user story, or an increment of work to be accepted. And acceptance criteria do not focus on how a solution is reached or how something is made. Instead, they illuminate the what of the work you are doing. So it is self-explanatory. So it will show like what are the works need to be done, what are the requirements, what are the functionalities need to be implemented, or what are the non-functional requirements need to be implemented. Is there any validations? Like for example, if you like to give any, if we would like to add any email field, we have some validation, right? Email should be in something, some format like all text or numbers at the rate gmail.com, at the rate some domain.com, something like that, right? So those validations, if we have any, all the conditions, it will be written here in this acceptance criteria. Once we are completing developing this, I mean while developing the user story, or once we are done with the development of that user story, we need to be cross checked with the acceptance criteria. We have to meet each and every point mentioned in this acceptance criteria in order to mention this particular user story is development is complete. All right, so this is the main thing. What are the things need to be done for this user story to complete the development, not to deliver it? So that is why definition of done is different than the acceptance criteria. And each and every user story have their own acceptance criteria. It is differ from one other user story. So it is user story specific. But definition of done is common for all the user stories. I will explain more once we come to that slide. Okay, so remember every user story have acceptance criteria. As a developer, you have to make sure you need to meet all these points, you have to complete all these requirements mentioned here in order to make this user story to resolved state. So once you have one number of user stories, you will be assigning by your own as a developer. Once we are done with the sprint planning meeting, maybe for example next Monday onwards, if the next sprint is started, then that Monday you will come, you will log in here, and you can take any of these user stories, you can assign it to you, and you can start working on it. So once you assign this user story to you, once you start working on it, you have to move this to in progress state. These are the different columns available for sprint board, and even these column names also differ from one project to another project, but the main thing is we are going to update the state of the user story where it is at current point of time. So if it is new means the development is not yet started. It is in progress means we are already started the development, it is in progress, we are doing the development yet, we have not yet completed it. So once you move this to resolved, it meant by it is like we have done with the development of this user story and testing of the user story, like that. But when we will close it as the, when we move this user story to close, it means once it met the checklist of the definition of done. Sometimes it is called closed, in some projects it is called done, the column name itself is done. So when you need to move this user story to done, once you met all the checklist of the definition of done. What is that checklist we will be discussing later. So once you are started development, you will move to in progress. Once you are done with the development and testing, you will move this to resolve. So far this is about the user story, right? I will explain this slide later because we have a more details in another slide, so I will explain there. Then user story, these stages we have already discussed, right? So if it is a new user story, it will be like to do or new. Once you have started working on this, you will move it to in progress. Once you are done with the development, you will move to another stage. Once you have done with the check with the definition of done, if it met all the conditions of definition of done, then that particular user story move to done state. Then it means it is ready to release. Then product owner will approve that. Okay, you have to make sure everything on daily basis. This is our daily task as a developer, right? Then what is meant by good user story? How is a user story is treated as a good user story? Means in general, a user story should be invest. A user story should have all these features or something, whatever you called. It should met all these what is that, conditions or these features. It should met. It means invest. You can just remember in simple way. It is invest. I means independent. So every user story is independent to. It should be not easy. Every user story should be independent to one another. It means any developer can work on any user story. So, for example, until unless if this particular developer completed the 12th user story, if any developer is unable to start this user story, like it has some dependencies, it should not be there. User stories are different from one another. It should be unique, independent. So maybe developer 1 can work on this, parallelly developer 2 can work on this. Like that, you need to design a user story. That is what a good user story should be. So each and every user story represent only one functionality, and those user stories are independent from one another. Then it is negotiable. A user story should be negotiable. Means if some requirements are we are unable, I mean not the requirements, but some functionalities if it is not supported, we will be in a open state to discuss with product owner and stakeholders and customer. Like that, we can negotiate the functionality or scope or goal of that user story, something like that. Then it should be valuable. So by end of the sprint, once we are done with that user story development, it should add some value to that particular product or particular software, because agile itself is a kind of mental mindset which we have. We need to add some value to the customer by end of every sprint, right? So it is not a kind of documentation kind of user story, or a simple work kind of which is not a not much functionality kind of stuff user story. Not like that. If you write any user story, it should add some value to the existing product by end of the sprint, once we have done with the user story. Say for example, here WhatsApp user, I as a WhatsApp user I want to send audio message. So this is a complete functionality you need to build. So once you deliver this, what will happen, the existing WhatsApp product will have additional features like audio message sending feature. It is very valuable to the customers. So customers can have some advantage and they can immediately utilize this particular feature. So this feature is adding value to the WhatsApp application itself. Apart from that, if we have some user story kind of like just label change or just some other version change, that is not going to add much value to the user story, right? So sorry, to the product, end product. So a user story should add some value, so it is a valuable, and it is estimable. Every user story should be estimable. A good user story should be. Okay, estimable means it has a clear requirements. It should have some clear requirements. It should have some clear non-functional requirements or functional requirements. Then only we can estimate that user story. We can able to estimate it. So once we are clear with that functional requirements and non-functional requirements, then only as a developer or as a development team or as a Scrum team, we can estimate that user story. We can assign some story points and we can start working on it. Right? You should be very clear. User story should be having very clear requirements. That is meant by estimable, and it is small. Every good user story should be a small user story. It should not be not much that much complex user story. It should be small so that we can complete it as much as possible, as fast as possible in the single sprint itself. Then it should be testable. As the user story is independent, it should be testable also as individual feature. Every user story should be a good user story should be a testable one. We can test this user story. We should be in a case like we need to test this user story individually or maybe combined feature. So for example, in our user story, the audio message we can test it, right? Once we are done with the development, we can test it. We can send some random audio messages. We can test it individually, as well as we can combine this with the existing WhatsApp application, and we can do the integration testing also with the existing application by sending audio messages with the 30 seconds limit or with 1 minute limit. Whatever the validations we have applied, everything we can test it, this user story. So this is a good user story. Like that, a user story should follow these principles like invest. You can remember it in easy way. So a good user story should be independent, negotiable, valuable, estimable, small, and testable. So you have to remember this. But in general, business analyst or product owner will write the user stories. But sometimes, as a developer, as a development team, even we will write some user stories if it requires. Like for example, if we are going to build a new functionality, but I mean, in middle of the sprint, we have decided that we need to implement some other feature or some other functionality. We need to write some other code, but that details are not there in that particular user story. You can create a new user story. You can add those acceptance criteria and all as a developer. Yeah, of course, we will be discussing this with Scrum Master and Product Owner, because we will be having a daily meeting, daily Scrum. So in some cases, as a developer, you need to be create some user stories. Sometimes it requires, so you need to keep it in mind as a developer also. But in general, product owner or a business analyst will do these things, right? So I hope you have understand, you got the point about user stories, and you have I mean, you have grasped some important points of user stories. If you like this video, please like it. If you have any doubts, please comment it out in the comment section of this particular video. Please subscribe to our channel for more video tutorials on more different technologies. We are planning to create multiple technology videos also. So please subscribe and share our channel to your friends, so that it will be useful to everyone, and it is motivated us also to create more videos. Okay, thank you so much, thank you for watching.